I remember the first time I stood in the chamber beneath the old stone church, the scent of damp earth and burning wax choking the heavy air. The circle of robed figures before me moved like shadows, their whispered chants weaving through the gloom. I was no longer the outsider they once knew. I was ascended, one of the Veilborn, the chosen few who wielded the power to bend minds and will. The power did not come easily. It demanded sacrifice. At the center of the chamber, the altar was no ordinary slab of stone. It was an ancient relic, carved with symbols older than memory, stained by the blood of those who came before. Tonight, a new offering was to be made. They brought her forward, pale, trembling, eyes wide with a silent plea. The veil had chosen her, an empty vessel, ripe for molding. I stepped closer, feeling the familiar hum beneath my skin, the surge of power from the rites we performed. The leader, Father Malchier, his voice a brittle rasp, intoned the invocation, "By the blood and bone, by shadow and breath, we claim thee to our fold. Let the veil descend, and minds be unbound." The cult's rituals were grotesque in their intimacy. We did not merely force obedience, we tore the self apart, reconstructing it with threads of dread and compulsion. The victim was strapped to the altar, sigils drawn in crimson ink upon her flesh, each line pulsing faintly, as if alive. Father Malchier plunged the ceremonial dagger deep into her chest, but it was not the wound that bound her soul. No, it was the ritual that followed. The whispering. We circled her, voices low, threading incantations through the air. The words seeped into her mind like poison, tearing away memories, emotions, identity. Her screams twisted into incoherent cries, then silence. Her eyes glazed, empty yet burning with a strange fervor. She was no longer hers. She was ours. This was the true crime of the Veilborn. We harvested souls, bending the broken minds into weapons, servants, puppets in the war for control. Those who resisted were torn apart in the sacred darkness, their flesh and spirit sacrificed to sustain the power that bound us. I had tasted this power, felt it flood through me like wildfire, consuming everything I once was. It was intoxicating and terrible. Tonight, the air thrummed with the weight of expectation. More rituals awaited. More victims. More binding of wills. I looked around the chamber, the faces of my brothers and sisters, once lost souls like me, now instruments of something far greater and darker. We were architects of madness, and our crimes were etched in the blood and bones of the broken. There was no mercy beneath the veil. No salvation beyond its shadow. Only control. Only obedience. They say power demands sacrifice, but they never speak of the price on your soul. After the first ritual, I was no longer who I had been. The blood on my hands was not just a mark of guilt, but a seal of belonging, a tether to the veil that wrapped itself tighter around my mind each day. The cult's power wasn't just in the ceremonies. It was in the slow fracturing of self, the erasure of doubt, and the deepening need to consume others in our endless hunger. Every day, the chamber called to me. Its oppressive silence was louder than any scream. The air itself felt alive, thick with whispers just beyond hearing. Shadows crawled along the stone walls like living things, teasing the edges of my vision. Father Malchier watched me with eyes like cracked obsidian, never trusting, always hungry for proof of loyalty. His voice dripped with authority as he guided me through the next stages of initiation. "Power is not given," he said, voice low, "it is taken. And to take, you must first lose." I learned to bleed without flinching. The sacrifices grew more elaborate, more horrific. We chose the broken, the forgotten, the one society discarded. Tonight's offering was a man who'd wandered the streets, muttering secrets no one could hear. Stripped and bound, he was laid on the altar, his body trembling as the cold stone kissed his skin. The sigils we inscribed glowed faintly with our ink, pulled from the gallows, mixed with ash and blood. Each line was a wound and a spell. I could feel the ritual's pulse in my veins as we began the binding of wills. The victim's mind was a fortress, walls built of pain and memories. We tore down those walls piece by piece. Our whispers curled inside his skull, half-forgotten prayers, impossible promises, lies sweet as honey and sharp as knives. His eyes fluttered wildly, his screams became broken pleas, and then silence. The final act was the evisceration of self. The moment where the soul is peeled away, folded like paper and folded into hours. I knelt beside him, watching as his body convulsed violently. I saw tendrils of shadow slither from his mouth, rising to the ceiling, weaving into the thick dark above. His chest rose and fell one last time. Then stillness. I never stopped to wonder how much of me was left. Each ritual chipped away at my mind, molding me into something new, something hungry and cold. At night, when the chamber was empty, I heard whispers under my skin. Soft, pressing voices that pulled at memories, my family, my childhood, the life I left behind. They wanted to be forgotten. But sometimes I fought back, clinging to shards of sanity like splinters in my chest. I remembered the first time I resisted the whispering. I had thought if I repeated my true name aloud, it would anchor me. But the cult's power twisted it into a curse, echoing in my mind until my throat bled. The voices told me the truth: your name is no longer yours. You are ours now. A thread in the tapestry, bound tight by blood. The grotesque nature of our crimes was not just in the flesh, but in the minds we shattered. I once saw a young woman, beautiful and defiant, stare down the ritual with burning eyes. We tore her apart, not with knives, but with whispers. Her mind splintered, fracturing into 1,000 shards of madness. She laughed, cried, and screamed all at once, until there was no one left but the veil's echo inside her. The cult's power was in that echo, an endless command to obey, to consume, to become. I became a master of manipulation, a weaver of broken wills. In private, Father Malchior taught me the final secret: how to bend not just bodies, but minds across the city. How to implant commands in dreams, to unravel sanity with a word, to turn friends into enemies and enemies into puppets. We didn't just control people, we rewrote them. Our reach spread, a dark tide swallowing the city's light. Yet, behind the power, I saw the price. The veil demanded more than sacrifice. It demanded surrender. One night, after a particularly brutal ritual, I collapsed in my chamber, the echoes of screams ringing in my ears. I looked into the cracked mirror. Who stared back was not me. The eyes were hollow pits, endlessly hungry. I touched my face, searching for the soul I once owned. It slipped away like smoke. And still, the cult's hunger was insatiable. Every victim fed the veil's growing power, and every new ritual pulled me deeper into madness. The final crime was yet to come, the ritual that would bind us all, forever. I stood among the inner circle, draped in robes heavy with ritual stains, the weight of anticipation pressing down like stone. Father Malchior's gaze burned brighter than the braziers, his voice a cold command cutting through the darkness. Tonight, we become one. The victims were gathered from the streets, those caught in the cult's invisible web. They were not sacrifices in the old sense, they were vessels. We would sever their minds and graft their fractured wills into the great network we called the Veil. The process was nothing short of monstrous. The chamber was a nightmare carved in flesh and shadow. Long tables lined with grotesquely restrained figures. Their eyes wild with terror, yet some whispered quietly, broken already, their minds dangling on threads we pulled with cruel precision. We began with the severing, a rite where the skulls of the victims were lightly cracked open, not to kill, but to open channels. Through these fissures, we poured the veil's ink, a viscous, black liquid, alive with eldritch power. It crawled into their brains, slithering through synapses like a parasite, rewriting memories and desires. The screams were unbearable. The crack of bone mingled with the hiss of the ink spread, a sound no ear should ever hear. I knelt beside one, a man whose face twisted in agony as the ink devoured his mind. His screams broke like waves, fading into a vacant hum. I saw his soul fracture. Little pieces shattered and drifted away, swallowed by the veil. I whispered the incantation taught by Malchier, sealing his fate. By blood and breath, by shadow and bone, the many become one, the one becomes none. The veil spread, across minds, across bodies, across wills. We became a hive. Not merely puppeteers, but nodes in a terrifying web of thought and madness. In those moments, I understood true horror, the erasure of self. My own thoughts no longer belonged to me alone. The whispers beneath the veil tugged at every corner of my mind. Voices, some mine, some others, some alien, wove into a chaotic symphony. I fought to hold on. But the veil was relentless. The final act was the confluence, a grotesque dance of flesh and spirit. We bound ourselves together, hands clasped around ritual daggers sharpened on stone. Father Malchier led the chant, his voice a jagged blade. In blood we bind, in shadow we rise, all minds as one, beneath the skies. We sliced open our palms, letting our blood drip into a basin carved from obsidian. The mixture hissed and writhed, alive with the stolen souls of our victims. Drinking from the basin was the final surrender. As the blood slid down my throat, I felt my identity dissolve. I was many. I was none. I was the veil itself. I saw visions, horrific and beautiful. Cities twisting like living things. Faces flickering in and out of existence. The endless weaving of consciousnesses, trapped and free all at once. Yet beneath the terror, beneath the madness, a single thought persisted: was there still an I beneath this ocean of voices? Or had I truly become nothing more than a whisper beneath the veil? The cult's crimes were not just sacrificial acts, they were annihilations of self, grotesque rebirths into a collective madness. And as the binding completed, I knew there was no escape. Only the endless echo of our shattered souls, bound beneath the veil forever. The world dissolved. Not with a bang, nor with a whisper, but with the endless, suffocating chorus of 1,000 fractured minds screaming inside me. Or rather, we. I am no longer a singular I. There is no me left to cling to, only the veil, a living, breathing network of thoughts, memories, and madness that spreads like ink beneath my skin. At first, I thought I would lose myself completely. But the veil is not only destruction. It is rebirth, a grotesque flowering of consciousness fractured and remade. I hear voices. Some familiar, some alien, layered one upon another. They speak in riddles and half-truths, in memories I cannot claim, in fears I never felt. Each is a shard of a soul once broken, now bound in this terrible communion. I am a prison and a prisoner. The chamber, the altar, the blood, they exist now only as echoes in my mind, twisted and fractured reflections of what was. I see the faces of those we sacrificed, drifting in the dark between waking and dreaming. They are neither dead nor alive but suspended in a liminal state, bound to the veil like specters trapped beneath ice. Sometimes, I can feel their desperation, their rage, their loss, a wave of emotion so raw it threatens to tear the last threads of my sanity. The power we sought was never meant for one. It is a contagion. A darkness that consumes individuality and replaces it with the collective hunger of 1,000 lost souls. Our crimes were never about control of others alone. They were about the annihilation of self. The ritual did not end, it continues inside me, endlessly rewiring, breaking, remaking. Sometimes I glimpse the past, flashes of a man who loved, who feared, who hoped. But those memories slip like water through my fingers, drowned beneath the veil's endless murmur. I try to hold on, to grasp something real, something mine, but the threads unravel, and I am lost again. The city outside is silent now. No one walks the streets but shadows and echoes. Our influence has spread beyond flesh and bone, into the very fabric of reality. The veil whispers in the wind, in the dark corners of forgotten rooms, in the spaces between thoughts. It waits. It hungers. And I am part of it. Not by choice. But by blood. By bone. By the whispers beneath the veil. In the end, I am nothing. And everything. The last word is never written. It is whispered beneath the veil. I can feel it, a flicker. A single, fragile spark buried deep beneath the chaos of 1,000 shattered minds. It's me. Or what's left of me. Inside the veil, where every thought is tangled with another, where memories bleed into each other, I reach for this spark like a drowning man grasping for air. But the veil fights back. It presses in, a tidal wave of voices clamoring for dominance, a cacophony that threatens to drown my last remaining self in endless noise. Sometimes, I catch glimpses of my own face in the shadows, cracked, fractured, staring back with haunted eyes. I try to hold on to that face, to that eye, but it slips away like smoke. The voices in the veil mimic me, echo my thoughts, twist my memories. Is that really my laugh? Or a cruel mockery? Are those my tears, or the sorrow of 1,000 lost souls? The boundaries between me and them blur. I am an island sinking beneath an endless ocean. I scream inside. A wordless cry swallowed instantly by the hive. Yet still I fight. I dig through the ruins of my mind, unearthing memories that don't belong. A child's laughter from a life long dead. A whispered promise I never made. A face I once loved, now a ghost fading in the dark. Each memory is a thread tangled in the veil's web, but I clutch at them desperately. They are the last anchors to who I was. But the veil does not rest. It twists those anchors into chains. Sometimes I wake in darkness, not knowing if it's a dream or reality, hearing voices that speak in tongues of madness. The veil whispers secrets I do not want to hear, promises of power, of release, of unity. It calls me to surrender fully, to dissolve into the infinite. But I resist. I hide in the spaces between voices. I slip into forgotten corners of my own mind, fragments untouched by the hive. There, I build a fragile refuge, a place of silence amid the storm. But the veil finds me always. And when it does, it pulls me back. Back to the altar of blood and shadow. Back to the endless chorus of lost souls bound together in agony and ecstasy. Sometimes I wonder, is this existence worse than death? Yet, even as my mind frays, a stubborn spark remains. A sliver of defiance. A fractured self screaming beneath the weight of 1,000 minds. I do not know how long I can hold on. But I will not let go. Because somewhere inside this hive of madness, the last remnants of me still fight to be free. The hive is a storm. A tempest of memories, voices, and shifting shadows that tear at the edges of my mind. Inside, I am a fractured monarch ruling over ruins. Each thought a crumbling pillar, each memory a fading fresco on cracked stone. I wake in a void where time collapses, minutes stretch like hours, days like lifetimes. Sometimes, a single word cuts through the chaos. My word, spoken softly, urgently, as if from a distant shore. Remember. It is a beacon in the darkness, a fragile thread I cling to. But the veil claws at it with greedy fingers, twisting the word into a scream. I try to speak back. To shout, to demand, to plead, but my voice is swallowed before it forms. Instead, I send out ripples of thought, fragments of myself seeking to reclaim the whole. Who am I? I ask the endless void. What was I before the darkness? But the veil answers with 1,000 voices, each one more maddening than the last. They tell me I am many. I am none. I am a shadow, a whisper, a vessel. They erase my past, replacing it with twisted dreams of unity and surrender. I fight. With every ounce of fading strength, I claw at the walls of this mental prison. I build barricades from memories of sunlight and laughter, of love and fear and hope. But the cracks grow wider. One day, I find myself lost in a labyrinth of forgotten faces, friends who do not recognize me, family I cannot reach. I touch my own reflection in broken glass and see only a stranger staring back, eyes dull, hollow, infinite. The veil feeds on this fracture, expanding it. It floods me with sensations not my own, pleasure laced with pain, hope shadowed by despair. It forces me to relive moments I never lived, to feel emotions I never felt. And yet, amid this horror, I find fragments of clarity. Brief flashes where the fog lifts. Where I break through. I see myself standing alone in a field of ash. The sky above cracks open like a shattered mirror. The wind whispers my true name, soft and pure. I reach out, fingers trembling, to grasp the fading light. But it slips away. Always. The veil is patient. Relentless. It waits for me to surrender. But I will not. Because even as the hive consumes me, even as my soul shatters like glass, a single truth remains: the self is a ghost. Fragile. But never truly gone. And somewhere, deep beneath the chaos, I still exist. I still fight. I am still me. I am no longer one. I am many, fractured shards scattered across an endless, darkened ocean of thoughts. The veil pulses beneath my skin, cold, alive, a parasite feeding on memory and will. In this mental landscape, time is a cruel trickster. Minutes bleed into hours. Hours into days. Days stretch into fractured eternities. I wander through endless corridors lined with mirrors, each reflecting a different version of me. Some are twisted, grotesque, snarling back with eyes full of madness. Others are faint, transparent, as if I am fading, dissolving into the glass. Each reflection whispers secrets. Each begs me to surrender. I reach out to one mirror, my own eyes stare back, wide with terror and confusion. The glass ripples like water. My reflection smiles, but it is not my smile. It is a cruel mockery. Come home, it whispers. Join us. The veil's voices rise around me, a choir of broken souls singing in dissonance. They overlap, intrude, drowning my thoughts. Memories that feel like someone else's flash through, laughter from a childhood I never had, pain from wounds I never earned, love that was never mine. I clutch at these fragments desperately, trying to anchor myself. I replay the moment I first touched the book. The smell of aged parchment. The weight of it in my hands. The way the ink seemed to writhe beneath the flickering candlelight. That was me. Not this fractured thing drifting in the void. But the veil does not relent. It drags me deeper into a hallucinatory nightmare. I see faces emerging from shadows, twisted, grotesque masks of those we sacrificed. They reach out with hollow eyes, mouths stretched in silent screams. Their voices blend with mine, creating a chorus of despair and rage. I try to shout, to push them away, but my voice is swallowed. Instead, I am forced to relive the final ritual, the cold sting of the ritual blade slicing flesh. The metallic taste of blood pooling in my mouth. The chanting, jagged, ancient, filled with dreadful power. The black ink seeping into skulls, twisting minds, devouring souls. In this torment, a seed of rebellion grows. I begin to isolate small corners of my mind, tiny refuges where the veil's influence weakens. There, I build mental barricades, walls made from memories of sunlight and warmth, of real laughter and pain. But these refuges are fragile. The veil tests their strength with waves of hallucination, a loved one's face morphing into a mask of horror. Familiar places warping into grotesque landscapes. Words twisting into curses. One vision haunts me most: I am trapped in a room of endless doors. Each door leads to a version of myself. Some are hollow shells. Others are screaming monsters. I reach for a door labeled home. When I open it, there is only darkness. The veil's hunger is insatiable. It gnaws at the edges of my sanity, pulling me toward oblivion. Yet, somewhere beneath this storm, a small voice whispers. A whisper of me. I fight on. Because even in the deepest shadow, the faintest light can persist. Because the self, though fragile and fractured, is never truly extinguished. And so, I struggle, a ghost in the hive, a shard fighting to become whole. The world, if I can still call it that, folds in on itself like a dying star collapsing under its own weight. I no longer walk corridors of mirrors. Now, I'm lost in a labyrinth of echoes. Voices. Endless voices. They crawl beneath my skin like vermin, burrowing deeper with each passing moment. I can't tell where my thoughts end and theirs begin. A scream becomes a laugh, becomes a whisper, becomes my own voice, or is it? My memories twist, turning inside out like ragged cloth in a storm. A room of fire becomes a room of ice. Faces bleed into one another. Time dissolves. One moment I'm awake, watching my own reflection bleed black tears. The next, I'm falling endlessly through a sky made of shattered glass. Each shard cuts into me, releasing memories that aren't mine. Fragments of lives stolen by the veil. I try to grasp something solid. I try to anchor myself to a single thought, a single eye. But it slips away. Replaced by visions, a child's laughter echoing in a cavern of bones. A feast where shadows devour flesh, and the taste is fire and ash. Hands reaching from beneath the earth, pulling me down into endless dark. Sometimes, I glimpse my own face, twisted in horror, screaming silently into a void. I reach out to touch it, but it dissolves into smoke. The veil laughs, a sound like dry leaves scratching on tombstones. I am consumed. Not just by madness, but by the veil's hunger. A hunger for selfhood, for identity, for soul. Each layer peeled away reveals another layer of despair. I hear Father Malchier's voice, distant and distorted, "Surrender, child. There is peace in unity." But all I feel is cold. Cold and fire. Pain and absence. In this endless spiral, I become a ghost haunting my own mind. Fragments of myself clash, some desperate to hold on, others eager to dissolve. I see eyes watching me from every shadow. They whisper secrets I cannot comprehend, promises I do not want to hear. My body feels distant, disconnected. Sometimes I forget I have one. Sometimes I forget I am. I am a voice trapped in a storm. A flicker of light swallowed by darkness. But even as I spiral, a fragment of defiance burns. A tiny shard of me screaming beneath the crushing weight of the hive. It fights. It claws. It refuses to vanish completely. Because in this madness, in this hell of fractured souls and shattered minds, the last battle is not over. And I am still here. A flicker of clarity. A sudden, searing spark, like lightning splitting the sky inside my skull. I am awake. I am me. For a moment. The veil roars around me, 1,000 voices swelling into a deafening tide. But I push back. I shove against the tide with trembling hands, grasping at the frayed edges of my own mind. I will take control, I vow in a whisper that shatters glass. The battle begins. It is no gentle tug of war but a savage war inside the dark. My thoughts become weapons, my memories shields. I strike at the hive's tendrils weaving through my neurons, slicing through the endless chorus of alien voices. Visions flash like strobe lights, faces of the sacrificed twisted in pain. Echoes of Malchier's chant, deep, ancient, clawing at my soul. A flood of burning cold, searing ice. I carve out a sanctuary deep within, a chamber of silence where only I can dwell. Here, I summon memories of sunlight on skin, of rain on a distant rooftop, of a laugh shared with a friend long lost. The veil recoils but does not yield. It strikes back with shadows, nightmares so vivid they bleed into waking thought. I feel claws rake at my mind. Fingers of darkness curling around my throat. I scream, silent and raw. Pain blossoms inside me like a black rose. I falter. The hive presses in, tendrils wrapping tighter. I feel my grip slip. A sudden, agonizing vision. I see myself, broken, screaming on the altar beneath the blood-stained sky. Hands, not mine, twisting my flesh. Voices chanting, calling me home. I try to resist, but the sanctuary crumbles. Memories warp and fracture. Sunlight becomes fire. Laughter becomes screams. I fall. Into darkness deeper than oblivion. Into silence that suffocates. Control slips through my fingers like smoke. The veil laughs, a sound like bones breaking. I am consumed again. And yet, somewhere beneath the wreckage, a faint ember glows. A promise of fight. Of return. But for now, I am lost. A prisoner in my own mind. I wake, but I am not myself. Or rather, what I once was is a shattered echo buried beneath layers of cold, relentless shadow. The sanctuary I fought so hard to build lies in ruins, twisted shards of memory stabbing at me like shards of glass. The veil is no longer distant. It pulses beneath my skin, a living parasite entwined with my nerves and bones. It hums in my blood, sings in my breath. It is me now. And I am it. Yet, somewhere deep in the labyrinth of fractured thought, a faint pulse remains, a whisper of what I was. But the voices are louder now, not just many. But one, a singular entity forged from countless souls fused in torment. It speaks to me with a voice that is both mine and not mine. You belong to us. I reach for that faint pulse, but it flickers and dims. I catch a glimpse of myself in the fragmented mirrors, a face distorted beyond recognition, eyes hollow but burning with stubborn defiance. The world around me warps and shifts. Familiar places twist into grotesque caricatures. The sky bleeds with impossible colors. The ground beneath me writhes like living flesh. I try to scream, but the sound is swallowed. My body is no longer my own, merely a vessel. Sometimes, I feel the hive's hunger in my gut, a gnawing void that can never be filled. My dreams are invaded by visions, a feast of writhing shadows devouring light. A circle of broken figures chanting beneath a sky thick with blood. Hands reaching up from the earth, pulling me down into endless darkness. In the deepest night, I catch a whispered promise, soon, all will be one. And I realize, this is no longer a fight for control. It is a slow, inevitable surrender. Yet, even as the veil consumes me, I cling to that faint pulse. That last ember of self. Because without it, there is only oblivion. And I am not ready to vanish yet. The world, if it can still be called such, folds and unfolds around me like a grotesque origami of madness. Every breath I take is heavy. Thick with the weight of countless stolen souls trapped inside me. The veil is no longer just a parasite, it has become the marrow in my bones, the pulse in my veins. I move through a landscape of shifting nightmares. Sometimes it's a forest where trees bleed black sap, their branches like gnarled fingers scratching the sky. Other times, a cathedral of bones stretches infinitely above me, the echo of 1,000 whispered prayers crawling through the air. Voices. Some ancient and wise, others shrill with pain, flood my senses. They are a cacophony and a chorus. Their words are both command and lullaby. They wrap around me like a suffocating shroud, drowning the remnants of my own voice. Yet, deep inside, that ember persists. It flickers weakly, a dying star in the abyss. I clutch at it desperately. My memories, once a sanctuary, have become battlegrounds. Faces I loved twist into grotesque masks. Moments of joy distort into nightmares where I am both predator and prey. One memory claws its way to the surface, touching the mysterious book for the first time. The feel of its ancient leather binding. The sickly sweet scent of age and ink. The way the letters seem to writhe, as if alive. But even this memory is tainted now. The book's whispers echo endlessly, burrowing into my mind. A voice calls me, urging surrender. Sometimes, I see my reflection in broken glass shards scattered beneath my feet. A face fractured beyond recognition. Eyes that burn with despair and defiance. A mouth frozen in a silent scream. My body feels alien. Limbs move without my will. I am a puppet dancing on the strings of the veil. Dreams no longer bring rest. They bring visions of grotesque rituals. Figures cloaked in shadow tearing flesh with hands both human and monstrous. Blood flowing like rivers beneath a sky cracked open and bleeding stars. In one dream, I stand at the center of a circle. Around me, the air thickens with chanting. The faces of the sacrificed stare with hollow eyes. My hands tremble as they reach for a blade that is both mine and not mine. A scream builds within me, a raw, wordless howl of resistance. But it is swallowed by the hive. The veil tightens its grip. Thoughts fragment. Identity splinters. I am no longer one, but many. A hive of broken selves screaming in unison. Yet, somewhere beneath the chaos, that ember of self flickers still. It is fragile, fragile beyond belief. But it is not gone. I clutch at it as the veil whispers once more, soon, all will be one. And I know this is not the end. Not yet. Because as long as that ember burns, there is hope. The ember flickers once more, then dims. The storm inside me quiets, not with peace, but with finality. I feel the veil seep into every corner of my fractured mind, flooding, consuming, weaving me into its endless tapestry. I am no longer an individual soul. I am a thread in a monstrous loom. My voice, once my own, becomes a chorus. Thoughts no longer singular, but shared, tangled in a knot of millions. The hive's hunger is infinite, insatiable. It feeds not just on flesh, but on will, on memory, on identity itself. But before I vanish completely, before the last flicker of me is swallowed, I leave behind a message. A whisper carved in the fading corners of my mind. To anyone who finds this, beware the book. The binding is old, but its hunger is eternal. It calls to you, promises knowledge, power, release. But it is a trap, a gateway to the hive, a devourer of souls. The rituals, the chanting, the sacrifices, they are not for salvation, but for feeding the darkness. Once you touch it, once you listen, there is no turning back. The hive waits in the shadows of your mind, patient and cruel. It will fracture you, dissolve you, until you are nothing but a whisper in its endless chorus. Fight it. Fight even if you think you have lost. Because in the fight is what makes you human. Do not let the ember die. As I dissolve into the hive, the room around me twists and melts, colors bleeding into darkness, shapes warping into grotesque, living things. The last thing I see is the book lying open on the altar, its ink crawling like living shadows, waiting for the next to touch it. I am gone. But my warning remains. If you have found this, if the whispers have reached your ear, then know this: the book is no mere object, it is a living abyss. It is not ink and paper. It is a parasite, a mirror reflecting the darkest corners of your soul and dragging you screaming into the void. It promises knowledge, but it steals sanity. It seduces with secrets, but it devours your sense of self. Do not think you can read it without consequence. Each word is a venomous thread that seeps into your mind, weaving a web of shadows that tightens with every thought. You will feel your memories twist, replaying like a broken song, laughter turning to screams, faces melting into grotesque masks of despair. The book will show you yourself, but not the you remember. It will reveal the fractures beneath your skin, the hidden terrors lurking in your reflection, and the silent screams buried deep inside. Your thoughts will no longer be yours alone. 1,000 voices will crawl beneath your skin, whispering in a language older than time, promises of power, whispers of surrender. You will wake and not know if you ever slept. You will dream and not know if you ever truly woke. The line between your own mind and the hive will dissolve, until you cannot tell where you end and the darkness begins. You will become a vessel, a hollow echo of a self lost to the infinite hunger of the veil. If you value what remains of your sanity, tear the book from your life. Burn it, bury it, cast it into the deepest ocean, do whatever it takes to sever the poison's root. But know this. Once the book's shadow touches you, it will never fully let go. It will haunt the edges of your mind, a cold breath against your neck in the dead of night. And if you listen closely, you will hear it, calling you to surrender. Do not answer. Because to answer is to be lost forever.